All right, so we have been working on a lab where we've been looking at hand volumes, right? I've already got it started. So we are today going to take all of our data that we've been collecting from 3 different classes, and we're going to do what we talked about yesterday. We're going to represent it in a picture form. Remember the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? When we look at a magazine article, what's the first thing you look at?
The pictures.
The pictures. Usually that's what we look at first. And then if we're interested in what the pictures show, we'll go on and read the article. The pictures tell a lot about what's in the article, usually. All right, so here's our data. We had our first period data, our second period data, our third period data. And as we were wrapping up class yesterday, we came up with a list of things that we thought needed to be part of our graph, right? We decided on a bar graph for this because that's the best for comparing. Do y'all remember that? And between what you guys came up with and what my other classes came up with, here is our final criteria that we're going to be graded on. So I want you to take your graph paper or whatever it is you're going to do your graph on, flip it over to the back, and I want you to write this down because this is going to become your checklist. Okay, this is what you said we needed for a good graph. And then we're going to talk through some of these, and I'm going to show you some examples of things to help you better understand what we're looking for. Listen, part of science is being able to communicate results of your experiment. You can do the best experiment in the world, but if you can't communicate your results to other people, nobody else is going to be able to use what you come up with. You could be the most inventive person in the world, but if you can't explain to other people how your stuff works or how you came up with it, then you won't make any money, right? Ultimately, we want to be paid for what we can do. Okay. I haven't put any points up there yet, but we'll focus on that next week. But these are the key elements that you're going to need to include. We're going to talk about how those work. And it ends with, what's the last thing on there?
Grade. Oh, neatness.
Neatness. I have rulers on the front table for you, and I expect you to use them. If you freehand your bars and they look ratty, you can forget your 10 neatness points. I'm just telling you, okay? Yes, you do. Okay, so I want us to talk first of all about appropriate scale. Appropriate scale. And obviously you have to have numbers to represent that, right? Mm-hmm. So look at your data for just a second. How high up does our scale have to go?
300.
300. Who said that? Okay, 300. That's our largest number, largest volume number, okay? Is it okay if it goes up to 400?
Yes.
Okay, what about 1,000?
No.
No. We need it to be in the 300 range, don't we? Could it be less than 300? Could our scale be? No, because that wouldn't be enough to put our graph on there, okay? So obviously we have to have an appropriate scale. And guys, since we're going to be using a sheet of paper, let me go ahead and say this here. I don't want you to create a graph in like a small little tiny corner of your paper, okay? I want you to take up the whole paper, at least 3/4 of the paper. Everybody say 3/4.
3/4.
All right, does it matter whether you do it landscape or portrait?
No.
It really depends on the way you design your graph. So that's going to be up to you, whatever works better for you. Now, here's the other thing I want us to focus on. This is the thing that's been giving people trouble today. Equal intervals. Okay, when you start putting numbers on your graph, you've got to decide what intervals your little boxes are going to represent. So here's what I mean by that. Let me get a line here. Okay? So here's my y-axis. Here's my x-axis. Okay? Y'all, one of the reasons that we're using graph paper is because there's lines already on there. So you want to work with the lines. Don't put little hash marks in between lines. Why would you do that? You've got lines. Use the lines, okay? So, where's 0 going to be?
At the
At the
corner.
This is the origin, right?
origin.
Okay, so this is going to be our 0. And we know we need to at least make it up to 300. It can be a little bit over. So what we've got to decide is what are each one of our little lines on our graph going to represent? Okay? Does anybody want to volunteer something of what you think would be good for them to represent? What do you think, Hudson?
Every
20. Okay? So the way my boxes are, and listen, is every piece of graph paper identical?
No.
No. So you've got to work with the graph paper you have. But if I make every one of my lines 20, 20, 40, 60, 80, this would be 100, right? 20, 40, 60, 80, this would be 200. 20, 40, 60, 80, this would be. Do you think my graph is going to take up 3/4 of my paper? Okay. So with this graph paper, we probably need to choose a different interval. Does everybody see what I mean by that? Okay. Anybody want to take give us another possible way of representing it? What do you think, Olivia?
You can go up by 10s and then do 50 and then go by 50.
Okay, so this could be 10, 20, 30, 40,
50.
50. Y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, 10, 20, 30, 40, another 50, that would make this what? 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, and I could even go up to 350, and I would still be good, right? Is that an appropriate scale for our bars? Is it appropriate intervals?
Yeah.
Is this interval the same as this interval?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
is each box represented by the same amount?
Yes.
Yes. That's what we're looking for.
We can
Now,
do that.
take a look at this just a second. Did I come back here and write a line on every single box?
No.
Do I have to do that?
No.
The lines are already there, aren't they? Okay. Now here's the other thing. Think about what we were looking at with the other day when we were talking about reading a thermometer. Look at this thermometer. Did they write a number by every single line on the scale?
No.
Do you have to do that?
No.
Why do you suppose they didn't have a number on every single line? Why wouldn't you want to put a number on every single line, Annalie?
Well, too many numbers and get all jumbled up because of it.
Makes it harder to read, doesn't it? So we need our main division lines to be numbered. We want to work with the existing lines that are there, and we want to create intervals that are equal, okay? So again, when you do this is what I saw people doing today. This is what I saw them doing. Watch. Are those equal intervals?
No, not even close.
Why would you start 0 away from the 0 line? Because if you do that, when you draw your bar, what does that mean part of your bar is going to be?
Negative.
The
Nothing.
negative area. Do we have any measurements that are below 0?
No.
No, we don't.
But
Okay.
they're equal if they were at 0, right?
We're going to have to pick something that's an equal interval. Now, do you have to do yours by 50s? No. You may want to do yours by 20s. That's fine. You may want to do yours by 10, especially if you want to turn your paper this way because you got a lot of space to work with. But don't put a dash on every single box. Let the lines that are already there work for you. Okay? Before you go past this point, you need to have somebody at your table or me look at your scale and make sure that it's appropriate scale and equal intervals. Because when I come over, if I make you redo it, I don't want you to be upset with me because you didn't have somebody check it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So, next thing, looking back here, We talked about appropriate scale. We talked about equal intervals. This is a no-brainer, right? Okay. Let's talk about labeling the axes. Okay. If we're going to put our numbers over here, this is going to be 50, 100, 150, 200, and so forth. What are those numbers representing? What?
She say how your volume.
What are these numbers representing?
Your volume.
Volume. Volume of what?
The hand.
Okay, so we want to label the axis, hand volume. Anybody see something wrong with what I just did?
You do.
You named
Let's
it.
use our language skills.
Hand volumes.
What do you know about titles?
You have to have a capital
They should be what? Okay, so just because we're in science class, does that mean we don't want to follow our language rules? No. Capitalize your titles, right? What else is missing here? Okay, yes, these are hand volumes, but there's something else that we need to include.
Neatness.
How is my person going to know what those numbers represent? What am I going to need to include with this? Jacob?
You need to put number leaders
Need to put the unit. Otherwise, how are they going to know what 100 is or what 200 is, right? Got to include the unit. All right, what goes on the x-axis really depends on how you set up your bars. And here's where you have to make a decision. Yesterday, we talked about 2 different ways we could group those bars. Do you remember?
Yes.
Somebody give me one way we could group the bars. Somebody that hasn't volunteered yet. I'm about to call on some people that haven't stuck their hand up.
I volunteer.
Somebody that, okay, let's see. Let's go with Dinah. How could we group our bars? You know, nobody said that today. She said we could do them parallel. If you do your bars parallel, would this scale go on the y-axis?
No, the x-axis.
You go on the x-axis. So I'm assuming you're going to do them
Silent.
not parallel this way, but up and down. Thank you. Vertical bars. You could do it parallel if you wanted to, but that wasn't what I was talking about. How are we going to group them? Ashley, what do you think? How are we going to group them? What do you think? DJ, how are we going to group them?
Like put the girls like all together and put the boys.
Do y'all agree with that? Okay, we could do the girls all together and the boys all together. For time, y'all, I'm going to draw, but I'm not drawing really neat, okay? Here's the girls, here's the boys. Does everybody agree? Group the girls, group the boys, okay? When you do your bars, you want to make sure your bars all have the same what? Width. Are they going to all have the same height?
No.
No, because they're all different measurements, right? But they do need to all have the same width. Okay, next thing. We're going to label according to the way that we group our bars. So how would we label this way? What would we put underneath here? Tavia.
First and third period girls.
Okay? Now, would we have to specify the period down here?
No.
What if we just did
The
girls and this was
boys.
boys? How could we differentiate first period from second period or from my second block from you guys? How would we tell the difference between them? Rebecca Ann?
You could use your key and use this first period as orange, or second and fifth period as green, and seventh period as blue.
That's exactly right. Do we have to put a 1, 5, 7 in there? No, we're going to color them so that our first periods are all the same. So I'm not going to take time to color. I'm just going to stripe real quick, right? If this is my first period and then I create a key that showed first period is the stripe, right? And then fifth period would be a different pattern or color. And then seventh period would be a different pattern or color. How many colors would I use for this setup?
3.
There, for some reason, there's always somebody who's artsy, and I appreciate those artsy people. Love you, because I can't do it. But if you're artsy, resist the urge to use 6 different colors. Would that make it easier or harder?
Easier.
Harder. We don't know
I
what
mean,
we're talking about.
I mean, harder.
what's gonna make it easier is if first period is the same color, right? Because if you're gonna use a different color for each one, then your key's gonna be longer and your key's gonna have more colors and it'll be harder to understand, right?
Yes.
Okay, what's the other way we could set this up besides doing boys and girls? What's the other way we could set it up? Somebody tell me.
You can do first period, second period.
We could do it by period.
Girls together.
Okay, so instead of doing just the boys on one side and the girls on the other, we could do boys and girls
First period.
first block, right? And we could do, something just happened, my pen just got crazy, but y'all know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? Boys and girls, I hate this is on the recording because it looks terrible. Okay, it's Crazy Pen Day, and then boys and girls, 7th period, right?
I like that one.
How many colors would I need to use for this?
6.
Raise your hand and tell me. How many colors? Think about it.
Ooh.
How many colors? Seth.
2.
Why 2?
Label boys and girls.
1 for the boys, 1 for the girls. Every period has a boy column.
Oh.
Every period has a girl column.
6.
Okay, so you got to decide how you want to do your bars, and you're going to have to create a key that tells how you're going to do the colors. That make sense?
Yes.
What's the last thing on our list?
Your
Title.
title.
Title. What would be an appropriate title for this?
Hand
Girls and
volume.
boys hand volume.
Yeah, would you want to put, a day at the beach?
No.
No, your title has to have something to do with what you're trying to show people.
Relevant.
All right? Does anybody have a question? So here's the deal. Before you start getting your bars drawn, what do you need to have checked?
Your work rate.
Scale.
The
And you're
intervals
checking for intervals and appropriate scale, right?
and the unit.
Once somebody's checked, then you can start working on your bars. Hey guys, rulers are at the front. I have colored pencils. Do not put my colored pencils in my electric pencil sharpener because this is a plastic base and it will clog up my electric pencil sharpener, okay? I have some handheld sharpeners in here and you're welcome to use those or use your own. Does anybody have any questions before we begin? Okay, I was planning to give you 30 minutes. It looks like we have it almost exactly 30 minutes. I'm gonna walk around and answer questions while you are working. All right, ready? Go.
Oh, you would, miss. I like that.